to Variety's Slice of Life, an Otaku Media podcast. As always, I am Anthony, and joining me today is the lovely Zach.
Hello.
And Jarrett.
Salutations, Internet.
We are a bi-monthly podcast talking about games, anime, and a whole bunch of stuff. Today we are doing our Gift to You special, where we have given each other animes to watch for the Christmas season. Little fantastic way to end off the year. And then starting next year off pretty strong. My computer is cucking me. Hold on. Starting off next year pretty strong with the 2020 review entirely, so we're going to be talking about some really cool and groovy things. But I gave Jarrett the fantastical anime of Samurai 7, which we've talked about before on the podcast. What'd you think of it?
So I will give a broad thing. I did enjoy it. But, like with most things, it's more than just as simple as that. I did have some issues with it, but that's mostly a later bit. I did enjoy it, though. Like, overall, I enjoyed it. It was very solid for what it was, which was a good samurai movie as a show. The set pieces of it being a interesting mix of like feudal Japan with mechs and like best I can describe like Breath of the Wild looking tech was an interesting thing to see at first. Because the first thing you see is you just see the giant ship coming through, and I'm like, that looks like something that would have been from Breath of the Wild. But it's very much it's not quite like True Grit, but it's like and I know like a lot of the westerns for us are just, you know, samurai movies equated to English audiences, but this did a really good job of capturing a lot of those not cliches but tropes and just like the feelings of those good samurai movies and putting it into an interesting setting with, you know, the semi old, semi new, semi future.
Yeah, the time period feels kind of lost in the weirdest sense because it's so advanced yet so primitive.
And it kind of pulls. I don't want to say it pulls a Star Wars, because Star Wars is maybe not the best situation, but it went like they even talk about like the Great War being a part where it was super advanced and a lot of like pretty much every samurai was just a mech, and then after the Great War everything fell apart and then the merchants tried to rebuild everything, so we have this breakdown of things that went back to being old and samurai not being giant mech people and being like normal dudes with swords again. But then you also still have those, they're the Nobuseri, which are just bandits. Just bandits in mech armor, which, alright, seems a bit overkill for, you know, bullying farmers for their rice, which, man, rice is so important in the show. Like, holy crap, is rice so important in the show. But it starts with starts like kind of a traditional Western where it's a group of struggling, in this case rice farmers, go out to hire 7 samurai to come protect their village from bandits, or the Nobuseri. And majority of the show, it's them trying to collect these 7 samurai and kind of like in the old like samurai movies, and very much the same way. You have one guy who is clearly like the leader, who is seen war and stuff and has gone through everything and is very wise, and I wouldn't quite say he's charismatic, because Kanbei is like somewhere in. He's charismatic, but he's definitely very wise for what he is.
Yeah, he's seen some shit.
Yeah. Also, he looks like a Jedi. Like, he's the most Jedi-looking character I've seen throughout all of this. But like, he's just super close to like Obi-Wan.
It's really funny because this is based off of this story is based off of an old Japanese folktale, and a modern interpretation of this folktale is actually Bug's Life.
I hate that you're not wrong about that now that I think about it.
Because it's the exact same story where bandits come in, they take their food, then some dude goes out and hires a bunch of warriors to come and fight them off.
Oh, there's even a brilliant engineer in there too.
Yep.
Oh, I hate it.
Yeah.
I mean, it works. Bugs Life was a very good movie.
Oh yeah,
so,
it's one of my favorites.
Like I said, a lot of good westerns are just samurai movies. So I'm not surprised. I'm not even angry. I like it. It's I like the 7 breakdown. Seven I think is almost too much of I feel like it's almost too many characters, but it works out just right to where you can have the gambit of character moments between all of them and then just kind of split into pairs or trios of it. Because everything between Kanbei and Kyuzo was interesting because Kyuzo only joined it because he's like, I am going to fight Kanbei at some point and try and kill him.
Kyuzo is the new green-haired samurai, if I'm remembering correctly.
Nope, he's the blonde-haired one.
Ah, the edgelord.
Yes.
Yeah,
the one who barely talks, super grim, dark voice.
Yeah, we have edgelord, we have the mechanic, we have giant robot samurai, which I love to death.
And he's voiced by Chris Sabat, so it's really good.
It all wins. We have the young green-haired kid. We have old wise mentor samurai, and then we have the other two that I always forget about. Yeah,
you have Shichiroji, or I call him by Momotaro, which is the nickname that they gave him, which is just a Japanese folktale. He's basically the samurai who gave up being a samurai because he was also Kanbei's what they call mate or old wife in the sub. Because he was with Kanbei when they fought in the Great War and he lived. He just went on to live his own life, basically living with not his wife but the person that he loves and living a normal life. And then you have Gorobei, who I'm surprised you didn't remember Gorobei, who was just the entertainer.
Yeah, I don't. He's the one that has the pole arm, right?
No,
other
that's
way
Momotaro.
around. Okay.
Yeah, other way around.
Yeah,
The Gorobei is the guy who every time an arrow got shot at him, he would eyes go wide and he'd catch it.
Oh yeah, okay, I'm remembering that. I watched this so long ago.
Yeah, I liked all of them, but now I can start getting to my small gripes about the show. Of the fact that there's only technically fully fledged only 7 samurai for a few episodes.
Yeah.
Because like most great things that involve 7 characters, some of them start to die. But before we get to that, we have the main plot of getting the 7 samurai. We eventually do get the 7 samurai of all of those. Then they go back to the village. And they do help beat the bandits. Sadly, Gorobei is the only one who... Well, Gorobei and several villagers, which this village has a very large amount of villagers from what it... Even though it never looks like there's that much.
Yeah, I don't think it should be classified as a village per se, considering the size of how many fucking people are there.
Yeah, there's a lot of people. There is enough people that they were able to spread them across... And they were on a mountain. A mountain that is disconnected from everything else except for one bridge, and they just grow rice there. But there's enough villagers to where they made a absolutely massive, gigantic ballista that they fired a giant, massive tree at the bandits.
I loved that. I love the idea of farmers fighting with primitive technology. It's really advanced stuff.
Yeah. The personality of all the samurai, I thought their personalities and then mix it with the other samurais' personalities was very interesting. Like Hitachi's hatred of traitors because he was a traitor. Like that whole thing was good. The fact that Kanbei has said that he's always been on the losing side of the battle, yet he's still somehow alive. Like it's like I've lost every war I've been in, but you're still here. So you're doing something right. Gorebe basically teaching Rikichi, one of the villagers who helps find all of them. Basically, his life lessons that he gives to him was very nice. Like I said, Kyuzo just constantly protecting Kanbei because he's like, I'm the only one who's going to be able to kill him, so none of you other guys aren't. And he even gives up his life as a bodyguard of a wealthy merchant to just go and be with Kanbei to help protect the village so that he can then fight him to the death later. And then there's also... Oh, where did he go? Oh, it's in the case. And then Kikacho, lovely robot.
He's definitely my favorite.
Him and Hitachi are definitely my favorites. Like I like Kanbei, but those two just hit something really good. I also do like Momotaro. What?
They hit different though.
Yeah, pretty much. Like I like the personality of Momotaro, but they don't give him enough lines, if that makes sense.
They're like, I mean, I know like a bit about Momotaro. Is like the actual tale. Like, is there a reason why they call him Momotaro?
They literally bring up the tale and say like when he is going to be leaving, like not his wife, but pretty much his lover. They bring up the tale of Momotaro. It's like, oh, he's just gonna be like Momotaro. He's going to leave, but he's going to come back with a great treasure because of what he's doing. She's like, you better come back with some good treasure. Just jokingly, it's like, well, you better come back then. Because they're like, oh, like Momotaro always leaves, but he always comes back and always with like treasures and whatnot.
Real treasure with the samurais we made along the way.
I wish we could say that.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh god, they're all dead.
Yeah.
Not all of them.
Too many.
Way too many. And then there's the entire side story with Ikkyo, who's the merchant lord's son. I will get back to him because he plays an important part in. I can't even call it the second half. It's like the last third of the show.
He's a very I like his character design, and like his motivations make sense to a degree. But
his motivations make sense up until he keeps getting weirdly fixated on the farm girl.
Yeah, his obsession with her gets a bit much.
Like it. I'll get to that in just a moment. Actually, I can get to it pretty soon because just getting back to this. Also, for fun Japanese references, there is also a Masamune who fixes swords in this show. So. Strike one. There's always a Masamune in these things. So. Let's see, the merchant lord, all that. Trying to make sure I get all my eggs in the basket. Yeah, and then the young samurai Kachiro. I still don't know fully how I feel about him in that show.
Yeah, he's kind of hateable, but he's also kind of lovable, and like he's like, definitely a young spirit.
It's like I totally saw where his story was going, but it's still when it happened, it was still like it was still kind of weird for it to happen. It felt like it could have been its own anime, and that it was introduced into this one that already had a plot going. Yeah. That's at least how I felt about it. Like, I felt like this could have been its own story entirely, but they just chose not to do that. I did also like them having Kikacho having been a farmer and then made himself into a robot to become a samurai.
Yeah.
And I one of the best moments in that show that I actually that I didn't think I was going to like, because I didn't think I would like Kikucho that much. But the speech that he gives when they have what's his name? Monzo on trial. The speech that he gives talking about how the farmers, the samurai, the merchants, and everyone are all corrupt. So they shouldn't really blame Monzo for what he did because he's just doing what he thought would be best for his family. Because at the end of the day, everyone is corrupt, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and like Chris Sabat does a really good job of making like his big gruzzled voice seem like desperate in moments like that, so his voice acting lends to that speech so much.
Yeah. Like Chris Sabat, I think, definitely had the best voice acting in this.
I don't remember anybody else's but his, so I'd have to take your word on that one.
Yeah. Well, just the character moments like that. I think like him and Hitachi had some good moments, but nothing quite to that level. But after they defeat the bandits, Gorobei is the only samurai to die in that fight. She dies weird because he dies basically from a ricochet. Because he tries to deflect the bullet, like a giant bullet shot from a mech, and it ends up he ends up cutting it and it ricochets. It comes back and hits him in the stomach. He dies, so they have a grave. But after this awesome, amazing setup of like getting the villagers to come together, having them being ready to fight, going through all this like the issues with the traders, having Kachiro finally have his first having his first kill of someone.
Yeah, because wasn't that a big deal? Like, they didn't want him to kill anybody?
No, it wasn't that. It's just he hadn't killed anyone. He had never killed anyone yet.
Oh, is that what it was?
He wanted to be a samurai, but he hadn't killed. Same with Hitachi. Hitachi actually had never killed anyone. He just used his skills to chop wood and get by on that. Because he would just chop wood for an endless amount of time. Yeah, but we have Kachiro killing his first person, which sends him into a... I only describe it as a blood frenzy. Like, he just goes, like, full on, like, I'm just now a war machine, basically. Which will play in later to something that I take issue with, but... there's that, Gorobei dies, and then they skip into the weird part of the show where Ukyo turns out to be a clone of the Emperor. That I feel like for me, it felt like they pulled it out of thin air, out of nothing. Because it was just like, oh yes, these villagers have fought back the Nobuseri. You know what? I'm going to take all these samurai that we locked up in my giant city, release them. I'm going to send them all out to other villages and have them fight Nobuseri too. And you know what? My father is now stuck in the capital because an envoy was killed, so now he's being held as captive for it. I'm going to go to the capital and go see how he's doing. To just then be stuck with a needle by the Emperor and go, ah yes, you're one of my clones. You're the 49th clone. Let's have a chat. A 3-day long trial then goes on. And then Ukyo kills the Emperor. The Emperor at this point has also had a child impregnated into the wife of Rikichi, who is a villager from the main set of people that the samurai were hired to protect. Because I guess at some point the bandits were taking the women to spare the village kind of thing. There's a lot of weird subplots running into this thing.
It definitely kind of goes off the rails a bit at the end. When in reality that should have been the easiest part.
Yeah, that should have been the easy ending. It would have ended 10 episodes early, but that's where I felt it should have ended. You had one character die heroically and the rest live out their lives. Cool. It made sense that they wouldn't stop there, but the way that they took it was a bit strange. because you have this like pretty rich boy who apparently was raised as a peasant, because they apparently took this clone, dropped him into the middle of a peasant field, had him raised. Then he was adopted by a merchant lord, so he learned the ins and outs of being a peasant and a merchant, and for some reason gaining the hatred of machines, because I guess when he was a peasant, Novaseri treated him like crap. Like, he has a really weird hatred for machine, and specifically machine samurai, so whatever.
I'm never really a huge fan of that trope where it's like, oh, this one guy was kind of bad to me, so I hate everyone of that race.
Yeah.
It's like, if it was like a job and you had multiple people of that like job be mean to you, I could kind of get it.
I mean, it's probably like all the Novaseri that handled his village, but still, like, that's...
Yeah, it's still, it's just a character trope that I don't like personally, but it's well overused.
Then immediately after Gorebe dies, Kanbei leaves to then go get Rikichi's wife and all the women that have been taken to the capital back. He does this by saying that he is the person who killed the envoy, gets taken to the capital, holds the emperor hostage until Rikichi's wife, Sanai, says that she actually loves the emperor. That shocks Kanbei into not killing the emperor. He's then taken prisoner for trying to kill the emperor. Then the whole thing with Ukiyo in that 3-day trial, where then at the end he just kills the emperor, becomes the new emperor. Kanbei escapes his execution. Meanwhile, like, Kachiro and Kikucho try to also save the women. They later all escape because Ukiyo is being a sly son of a bitch and just, like, he was like, oh, you came out with the women? Oh, well, I'll let them go. Oh, so your execution is staged by this point. Go back to your village.
I've watched this and I'm still lost.
Yeah, Ukiyo does this whole thing of trying to play everyone against each other. He's like, tells the Nobuseri, yeah, no, keep attacking the villagers. Get more rice out of them. He befriends the villagers, tells the samurai to go do a good job and protect these villagers. Meanwhile, they're giving him more rice because for some reason they trade rice for fuel cells with another third party. It's so weird. And like, I get, like, watching the show, like, I get his point aside from his weird hatred of the machine samurai, but anyways, that goes on. Kachiro goes into basically a blind rage of, I'm just a murder machine now. The main girl, Kirara, keeps going back and forth on whether she likes Kachiro or Kanbei. Apparently settles on Kanbei. That's then rejected later. Also, he's like 30 years older than her, so that's weird on its own end. So there was a weird love, not even triangle, it was like a love V where it was one person kept flip-flopping between two people. But apparently for most people, even though for our viewership perspective, it looks like it was Kachiro, it was really, she was in love with Kanbei all along. Never made sense to me, but whatever. I guess the crystal doesn't lie.
It really sounds like if they were to just trim the fat of this and not have all of this dumb shit like all together, it would have been a lot better of a show.
Yeah, like it was a lot. Like especially towards like the later third, it was a lot going back and forth.
I am not trying to rush you, but I just want to wrap this one up soon so we can get to the other ones.
I'm almost done. Dang, all I have is my gripes in the ending. So they go back to the village because Ukiyo is like, well, I need to make an example of this village because they started this whole thing and it's a convoluted plan. I won't get into it. They go destroy the village. The samurai go back, defend it. In a pretty cool fight scene, actually, because at one point they're just floating on a gun that they found in the desert from a destroyed Nobuseri.
Oh, yeah.
So one of them is literally piloting the gun while the others are literally samurai deflecting lasers back at this giant
That was so cool. It was so over the top, but it was so cool.
And I love Ukyo just going, it's like, no, Kanbei has a plan. He isn't going to be stupid enough and just keep going directly at me. And he's like, he's just going directly at me. He doesn't have a plan. Well, this is unsatisfying. Does that. They eventually have the big fight. And then we get to Hajime dying heroically by severing the engines from the ship. But he gets pinned by a giant sword and kills himself by setting off the explosives, separating it. Which is really sad because I really liked Hitachi because he was the engineer and he was really cool. And I liked his very laid back attitude.
Yeah.
So heroic death, positive, fine. Then, oh man, then Kyuza dies because Kachiro goes stupid, picks up a gun to protect Kanbei, shoots the dude who's going to attack Kanbei, but Kyuzo is conveniently behind him and now riddled with bullets. So Kyuzo gets the most unsatisfying death out of everything because now A, he's not getting his fight with Kanbei, B, he was killed by friendly fire. Stupid and I hate it.
Yeah. I think friendly fire is like one of the worst ways to go in like a classic story unless it was like the person was known for being irresponsible.
Yeah, or if it was a duel or something.
Yeah.
Kikucho gets a very heroic death because he literally takes a giant sword, does the samurai vibration thing to basically make it super, like, basically turn into like a vibro knife from Star Wars, and cuts the ship to where it will turn away, stop crashing directly towards the village, and turn and go off the cliff. And he puts so much ferocity and heat into it that he melts himself, and all that's left is his feet. They're just like embedded in the ground. I'm like, okay,
So
then.
badass. So dumb. So badass.
Okay.
Then, meanwhile, Ukyo got stabbed but not killed by Kanbei, which just shows me that Kanbei is not good at killing people. So Ukyo is just like, oh, my precious Kirara, how are you doing? And then he gets punched the frick out of there, and then somehow falls in front of the giant capital ship going over the cliff, and then the giant capital ship falls on top of him, presumably, hopefully, more likely killing him. Then there was also a massive explosion. And then we just go to the village being saved. Kachiro basically going, yeah, no, I'm just gonna go live the life of a samurai at this point because, well, I'm a murder machine. You keep living because, the people that died deserve their tales to be told. But now he's like basically PTSD child, and it's weird, and he's weirdly edgy now.
Yeah, for being in like one battle, he's really edgy.
To be fair, crazy battle, but still. And like he leaves, and then it's just Kirara realizing that apparently, like, even though she's in love with Kanbei, it's clearly never going to work out. And then the end of the show is just beginning of the race season. Kanbei and Momotaro leave. That's it. That's the end. I'm just like, okay, we're not even gonna go over the meaningful deaths of 3 out of the 4 and the pointless death of the 4th. Okay, cool. So now we just all live happy and peacefully. Is that what's going on? There's no emperor now. We're just back in an age of farmers.
There's
now?
no power vacuum or anything. It's fine.
No, it's not like there's going to be a giant merchant samurai Novaseri war or anything. Just, yeah, nope, that's the end right there. Tale as old as samurai time, I guess. Ambiguous ending.
Overall, though, despite its problems, like, what would you rate this at, like, 10?
Out of a 10, 7.
7?
7.
Yes. Samurai 7 gets a 7.
Yes. Because it was good. It had its issues. Overall, good, but not like a masterpiece. It was a good samurai movie up until the later third. Because I think it's the third, yeah. I think it's the third. Like, up until that point, it was really good. and then it was just kind of like meh to a lot of crowded extra storylines. Like the fights and the death, I will say the fights and the deaths aside from Kyuzo's were good.
Yeah.
The fights were always cool, the music was good, the intro song was good, and I liked the animation for that one. It was very early 2000s, but it worked. Alright, that's me.
Alright.
I need a drink.
So, I also recommended Zach to watch one of the weirdest animes that I've ever watched called Ergo Proxy. I've talked about it many times on this podcast before, more so than Samurai 7. I gave you both very underrated animes, and I didn't really realize that until after the fact. Where it's like, I believe that these are just really not seen by the public. But Zach, what'd you think of Ergo Proxy?
Well, first of all, I have to say that there's a pretty funny linking factor between the two that I got this time, because I got Ergo Proxy from Anthony and Great Pretender from Jarrett, and both of them coincidentally have a ending song licensed by a non-Japanese band. Or Ergo Proxy being Paranoid Android by Radiohead, and Great Pretender being Great Pretender by Freddie Mercury. Also, coincidentally, both have a character named Dorothy in them. Not that Ergo Proxy's Dorothy is very important, but I just thought that was funny. Both of those things lined up. But Ergo Proxy was... I have no fucking clue. I wish I could even give even a semblance of a plot synopsis, but I really don't even know. It's like this. It's like this girl lives in this domed city called Ramdo, and then there's these monsters called proxies that are just running around. And they're spreading a disease that's giving androids souls.
This is all within the first episode.
Yeah, it all goes really fast, and then she's tracking down the proxy, and then there's a second proxy, but this one scared her. They make it very important. This is the only time I've ever felt fear was this proxy.
Yeah.
And I hate this scene so much because it's she's in the bathroom wearing almost nothing. She's wearing very skimpy clothing. The proxy busts in, and then a second proxy busts in, and then touches her lips in the weirdest way. And it's even worse once we figure out that proxy is the other main character.
What?
Yeah, so she reads a message on on her mirror that says "awaken," and she's like, "What the fuck does that mean?" And then her roof caves in, and then this big ass proxy just stands there, and shoves his thumb in her face, touching her lips really violently. And then she sheds a tear, and then he leaves. And then you find out way later that that's the other main character, and it raises way more questions than answers.
And I have to say, so the way that scene is framed is so there's two proxies. I'll call them by the names they're given later. The Ergo Proxy and the Monad Proxy. The Monad Proxy has this weird mouth thing, this thing in its mouth, and the Ergo Proxy has a mask. The way they frame this scene, it makes it seem like the Monad Proxy is the good guy and the Ergo Proxy is the bad guy, because the way the Ergo Proxy touches Riel. But then probably 2 scenes later, we get a scene in the mall where Vincent's being chased by the Monad Proxy, and the Monad Proxy is just tearing people asunder. And then there's a scene that lasts way too long, where the third main character, Pino, is with her like quote unquote mother, like owner or whatever, because Pino's an android, but she's like a companion who's meant to be her daughter. But they have an actual baby now.
It's
But
so complicated.
They have the baby in the carriage, and they're going up an escalator, and then it's this slow motion scene, like Vincent's like shooting behind him with a gun while the Monad Proxy's like I hate this anime so goddamn much.
It's so complicated.
But like, note my confusion that I thought Monad Proxy was the good guy. But like, Pino starts like taking the prayer pose. The mom just gets decimated by Monad Proxy, and then the baby falls down the escalator and dies. All in slow motion. It lasts way too long, and then I was just like, "Huh? I guess that one's the evil one, huh?"
Uh-huh.
Oh god, this anime fucking sucks. That's like right in the beginning too.
Like, I've heard Anthony tell, like, bits and pieces, very loose bits and pieces of this, and every time I have questions and Evanescence playing in my head every time I describe it.
Yeah, the main character looks like the Evanescence girl for some reason.
Yeah, the writer of the show is a real big fan of Evanescence, and he's like, I'm gonna make my main character look like her.
And then,
What is it with people doing this? It's like, you got that, you have the guy who made The Boys who just stole, what's his name's likeness from Hot Fuzz and whatnot.
It really feels like the anime spins its wheels for a bit, like Vincent Lee, like Vincent. I don't even remember why, but people are after Vincent, so Vincent escapes the dome.
Well, Vincent is
also like
what do they call the visitors from other domes?
Immigrant.
Is it just immigrants?
Yeah, he's an immigrant.
Immigrants are really looked down upon here. Like, they're like below second-class citizens, and they start hating Vincent, especially because he's now has weird associations with the Monad Proxy, and so everyone's like really mad at him now.
Yeah, he escapes, taking Pino with him because Pino's just around. Because Pino got affected with the virus, so she just kind of like hangs out with Vincent now because she just like runs into him.
He's tone deaf. Sorry.
Yeah, but I add that Pino is like the saving grace of the show. She's like the comic relief, but in the plot, you can entirely remove Pino, and it takes nothing away from the plot. Pino doesn't do anything for the plot. It just makes the show a little bit more bearable.
Interesting.
Pino has a really good scene
Because
towards the end.
Yeah, Pino's got good scenes, but like towards the end, you learn that Vincent and Riel are like immensely more important than they should be. But Pino actually doesn't have anything to do with the plot. She just like very coincidentally runs into Vincent.
Yeah. So, I guess we should talk about. So Vincent gets like essentially kicked out of the city. It's either he dies or he leaves the city. They still want him dead, but they're like, if you escape the city, we're not going to go hunt you down too hard.
Because they're convinced that he's already going to die if he leaves the city, because it turns out outside the dome is like poisonous air or whatever.
Yeah. Well, they say it's poisonous air. Because, yeah, I don't know, it gets weird. So there's like a small group of people living outside of the city, and they just like feed off their like trash and like fish and stuff. And they're very weird because they keep like bringing up characters that seem super important, and then like, what was it, like the 99 rabbits or whatever the fuck that one thing was called?
Not their ship.
Yeah. they like kept bringing these things up, and then they showed that lady that was in the jumpsuit a handful of times, and you're like, oh, you're gonna be a main character. And then just like Vincent's like, all right, bye. Just pieces the fuck out.
Yeah. Like Vincent's like hanging out at this camp, and like the worst part is like these people in this camp, they were doing perfectly fine for like years. Vincent shows up, they all die.
Mm-hmm.
Like Vincent and Riel get all of these guys killed. Like not a single survivor. Because Vincent, Riel, and Pino kind of get spot. Like Vincent and Pino get spotted. It's like drones just start like killing people. They kill like a child, which makes the mom, like, who seems more, who is that important looking woman, makes her pretty angry. And then like this plan was like we're gonna make the ship and then go. And then they get the ship. Everybody dies on the trip. One dude who's like the leader of the place. He sneaks into the dome in this kind of interesting scene where it's like framed where you're like, oh, Vincent went back into the dome at the risk of his own life, but it was actually that dude the whole time.
Oh yeah, and he brought like that doll with him.
Oh. I forgot about the dumb nutcracker. Why do you remind me about the dumb nutcracker thing? I hate it. It doesn't make any sense.
I'm so confused.
So this guy, who he's like the leader of the village, has this like nutcracker, which is from this
of the crazy outside village.
Yes,
Okay.
he has like a nutcracker that's from like the
Mall.
The mall. It has like a big clock, and it's got like a bunch of nutcrackers, and one is missing, and they show that shot a couple times. And then you find out that it's the guy who's like the head of the town has that nutcracker for some reason.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And the significance of this is
No clue.
What I think it is that he's holding on to a piece of the city to hold on to his sanity, and it shows that he wants to go back more than anybody. Like everyone else is completely complacent staying there, but he wants to go back.
He's like the most obsessed with going back, and also he's like a chronic liar. Like he just can't. He like essentially gets everybody into like deep shit because he won't stop lying.
Huh.
Because like he keeps lying to protect the people, but then there's just like a point where it's like you gotta tell them the truth or bad shit's gonna happen.
Yeah. So they pretty much say Vincent has to come back. And then it turns out to be that guy instead, and then...
Yeah, and then he's like, finally I made it back to the city. He sheds a tear, and then they shoot him dead. Yeah. And then the one angry mom gets like she gets like shot on their way out, and then just like everybody dies on the trip, so it's only Vincent and Pino left.
I do like the shot because it's them traveling on like the 99 Rabbit, which is like the name of their like ship. I say ship, Jarrett, in like the loosest form. It's essentially a hover boat because there's no water.
It's a solar sailboat, which is essentially the same thing as the little surfboard things from Treasure Planet, but like a small like dinghy.
Uh-huh.
Oh, and like also there's never any sun. It's always cloudy, and there's no plants or anything. Like it's just a desolate wasteland.
Uh-huh.
So that's why the domes are like hospitable, while outside it's like completely uninhabitable because there's no sunlight essentially.
And also, like I said, the air is like poisonous. Like Vincent barely survives it, and then Riel almost dies by it. That's why they have to get Riel back into the Ramdo, because she almost dies from the air.
That's right. The air was poisonous. The cure was fake. That's what I was thinking of.
The dude lied about the cure. I think Vincent probably only survived because he used the proxy.
Yeah. And so, like, I like the scene when he's leaving to go to the other dome. Because Vincent is from another dome, so he's going back there. And while they're sailing there, they're losing people one by one. So it's them literally pulling over, burying the person, and then getting back on the boat and heading out again. And they do this shot a couple times, and it's actually kind of a cool thing. I like it at least.
Yeah, but yeah, and then just like, it just kind of goes along like in like episode 9, Vincent learns that he is the Ergo Proxy, and then he fights another Proxy who was like the Guardian or whatever. He meets a guy who's a Proxy. He was running a dome, but then he was dissatisfied with the way the dome was ran, or like he was dissatisfied with the way the dome turned out, so he killed everybody and just lives there by himself now.
Well, it was like a dome that was kind of divided in half, where the two proxies were on opposite sides, if I remember right.
Yeah, because Vincent killed that Proxy an episode earlier.
Yeah. I do want to say though, real quick, because we did kind of skip over. We skipped over something. I'm sorry. That Riel technically, quote unquote, dies in episode 7, who is like the main girl of the show.
Oh.
Where like the ending of that is a robot literally comes up and like kills her, and then the fucking end credits, and you're like, what the hell is happening?
Okay, I thought that, now that I think about it, I thought that death was faked, but after seeing the ending, I think I can realize probably what actually happened there.
Yeah.
So I take it this isn't like a Gurren Lagann, Oh man, I forgot his name. Man, I feel awful now.
Kamina?
Yeah, Kamina. This isn't like an episode 7 Kamina death where like it matters for the rest of the season, does it? Or...
No, it's like, you're like, holy fuck, they killed off Riel in episode 7. Okay, they're gonna bring her back, right? And then, like, the next, like, 7 episodes are about Vincent, and you're like, well, what the fuck happened to Riel? We saw her get stabbed, and that was the last we see of her for, like, 7 episodes.
Uh-huh.
No, there's that episode where she's in that, like 19, like, kind of 40s, like, America-looking place. There's, like, all the robots mowing the lawns and shit, and then she meets a little girl who wears her makeup, which it makes a lot more sense after seeing the ending.
Yeah, they like, find a dome that's, like, being prepared, or something. Like, they say it's being prepared. That whole dome is weird.
Yeah. But, yeah, I'm just gonna skip through a lot of it, because a lot of it's just, like, eventually Riel does meet up with, like, travels out and meets with Vincent again. And then they, like, pretty much it's just them, like, location hopping until they get to Mosque. And, like, occasionally Vincent fights a Proxy. There are a couple people you meet. There are a couple characters where you think, like, is that character a Proxy? But they never say that they're a Proxy. Like, there's a dude who just, like, owns a bookstore in the middle of nowhere. That dude was probably a Proxy. There was the weird unexplained game show episode that doesn't make any sense.
Who wants to be in jeopardy?
Yeah, I thought those characters' lives would be in danger. Their characters, they weren't in danger at all. Like, that show is very leisurely.
It's quite literally the last episode, they're on a boat, and then the next episode starts, and they're in the game show. And there's, like, no transition between it, and then that episode ends, and they're back on the boat.
I think Voltron pulled that off, but...
But at least in Voltron, they went through, like, a black hole. In this, there's just no explanation how they got there or back.
We could have used one scene. That's my only gripe with that. It's like, I feel like it could have been explained, but I feel like we could have used one scene to do that. And they just didn't.
Like, the game's being broadcasted into Ramdo, like the original city.
Uh-huh.
And, like, this whole episode's a lore dump as well. Like, they're just dumping all this lore about, like the boomerang the boomerang, whatever the fuck that was, the Proxy project, Proxy 1.
Oh, Anthony, one small note. I did have one more complaint. Stupid mid-show recap episode again. Continue.
Understandable.
I mean, with like 24, like, what is that?
27? 26.
I feel like that deserves that.
Well, I would say yes, normally. But the things that they recapped didn't matter. They recapped nothing. But they treated it like a recap episode. They recapped like all of like 2 episodes before. That was it. They never really went further back than that. Alright.
But what's it? Yeah, and then they just keep going along. Eventually, they get to Mosque. Not really much happens at Mosque. They just find like a bunch of stuff written on the walls. They find a pendant that's suspiciously that looks exactly like Vincent's. Vincent has this pendant. One has 1 on it. The other has 13 on it.
So, are the proxies like a monster that they can willingly turn into, or is it like a thing that they lose control and
they can willingly.
They are the proxy, but they can willingly turn into a human.
Yes,
kinda.
but Vincent
Okay.
doesn't have his memories because he took them out.
Yeah, Vincent took out his own memories so he could become a normal guy. But like sometimes he'll like go into the proxy form, and the proxy form has essentially its own personality.
So, are you born a proxy, or do you become a proxy?
You're born a proxy. They're made creations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's all explained in like the last episode. The last episode is literally just like Proxy 1 and Vincent just jabber on about lore at each other for 20 minutes.
Also, some semi-relevant things. People can't have children in this. Like everyone's non-fertile.
Sterile.
Yeah, everyone's sterile, and they're like these breeding dens where it's like these weird monsters in tubes, and they can produce babies, and it's weird.
I don't know what that's a metaphor for.
Socialism? I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's just a thing.
And they're like, it's like, we got to go back to Ramdo. And then the next episode is Pino by herself in Disneyland.
Quite literally. Where it's a dream, but it's also real.
Yeah, it's like Pino's in Disneyland.
Hold on.
Yeah, Pino's in Disneyland, and then like the like Will Be Good or whatever his name was, who's the freaking Walt Disney of this place. He turns out to be a proxy, and he's just like, Pino is like, please don't let Vincent and Riel come here, because if Vincent comes here, we'll fight.
Oh yeah,
and then Pino wakes up, turns out she had a dream, and she tells him not to go there.
That's kind of a thing too. Is that if proxies are near each other, they almost always. It's like kind of foretold that if proxies are near each other, they will kill each other at some point. Like one will kill the other.
Then what about him and that other one in the beginning?
He did.
Yeah,
he killed her.
He killed that one.
Oh, okay.
Vincent has killed every proxy he's met.
Well, that's good for the main character then.
Yeah, because like Vincent's like ridiculously strong. Like he meets a guy who is like a proxy. He's the guy that just let the town go to ruins. And he's like, yeah, I ran this town. I don't want to run it anymore, so I'm just drinking and having fun. And they eventually end up fighting, and Vincent kills him. It's a whole weird thing, but it's yeah.
God. I don't know. I just remember the really dumb episode where fucking the proxy is like disguising themselves as Vincent and Riel and like trick them. That episode was dumb. Yeah, but it's like they got, okay. So I hate this because episode 19 is Pino in Disneyland. It's a really good episode, actually. I actually really like that episode. Yuri Lowenthal plays both like this doctor dude, but he also plays one of the freaking mascots in Disneyland. Just like the fact that Yuri Lowenthal is in this, because he's just such a silly voice.
Yes.
Also, I hate his character, that fucking doctor guy. I fucking hate him. He's the worst.
How can you hate Spider-Man?
There's a scene I hate. There's a guy I kind of like named Raul Creed. There's a scene where Raul Creed like gets the doctor guy like on this like secret proxy thing, because he has like a proxy like under wraps or whatever, and then he's like, "You want to?" He's like, "You've been a good boy." He's like, "You get adult toy or whatever." It's the worst conversation I ever heard because it's like so many sexual innuendos, and I was like, "Is this supposed to be sexual or not?"
That
And then when he looks at and then he pins him against the freaking
God.
tube, with his arm behind his back, his head into the tube. It's like, is this sexual or not? I don't know.
the doctor guy is probably my least favorite character because A, he's fucking weird, and B, he's just like, his motivations are so weird. Like, he's just obsessed with Riel for no reason.
It's like, yeah, they go, but it's like a dream episode, Pinot in Disneyland. Next episode is an episode about Vincent being trapped inside of Riel's mind.
Forgot about this.
It's a fucking stupid episode, and then at the end there's like it was another dream episode, and they weren't at Romdo yet. And then they get to Romdo, and everything just goes to mad bullshit. Like they get to Romdo, and then like the immigrants are like fighting a war against the robots who are all infected. Like, just like instantly, all of like Romdo is just gone to ruins. Like, we don't even get to see the build up to it. It just happens like instantly. There's like a dude who's like, I guess he's insane because he's like writing on like a desk and acting like he still has all the technology stuff. I didn't really get that. Yeah, but then like, fucking.
So
Vincent meets Ergo Proxy 1, and then they just blabber on about like, oh, you're.
well, you don't forget that the doctor guy has a child Riel at some point.
Yeah, he has like a child clone of Riel, and then like no one.
Yeah, it's real unsettling.
Yeah, and then like he meets Riel again. He meets the real Riel, and then he's just like, "It's like, you're not my Riel."
Oh?
But oh yeah,
Cue the unsettling
yeah.
music.
But then they blab like, fucking Vincent meets. They killed like the guy who runs the entire dome, which is Riel's grandfather, who's just this old dude hooked up to oxygen equipment, who just has like 4 Greek statues that just talk around him.
Those Greek statues are fucking sick, though. I fucking
They are
love
pretty
that.
cool.
They're just like these
Yeah,
4
it turns out-
giant statues on like chains that bob up and down, and they just like talk really aggressively.
Alright then.
And I think what was it? It was like, okay, so it turns out that like did Vincent create Romdo, or did Proxy 1 create Romdo?
Vincent created Romdo, and then Proxy 1 took over because Vincent was like, nah.
And then like the director guy, he's just like a puppet or whatever. Because no one's supposed to know that the proxies are running everything. But yeah, so like
gets better.
Vincent talks to Proxy, and then they just like, oh, do you know what proxy means? It's like, oh, we're the proxy of God. Because it turns out the humans. So humans, the world fell to ruin. So the humans got in a ship and went up to space, and they created the proxies to create domes, and then the proxies created humans to like run these domes to be hospitable for when the humans come back. But the humans created for the domes can't breed because they're supposed to die off. They're supposed to die off so the humans from space can take back order. And then the proxies have like weaknesses, like they fight each other, they die in sunlight. So like, you know, if the Earth gets better, then all the proxies will die out.
You can't forget, though, that Child Riel was also a proxy.
Yes. Okay. So the proxy that died in like the first 3 episodes, the Monad proxy. It turns out the Riel clone is Monad proxy. I don't get how that works.
So
'Cause it turns
Monad,
out the Riel is like super important for some reason.
so Monad Proxy Riel is like, hey Vincent Law Proxy, you're fucking awesome. I'm gonna fly up to the sun.
Yeah, and then Daedalus, the doctor dude, he gets crushed by a rock, and then he's just like, "No, Riel, you're flying too high."
And then she flies up above the clouds and then just disintegrates. I do like
Daedalus
her.
has the least climactic death ever.
Yeah.
Riel's just like, "Daedalus, watch out!" And then just a beam falls on him. And he's like, "Oh!"
Even fucking Matt Mercer's character, who the fuck was he? The guy who had the entourage that just became a main character at the end.
Fucking Raw Creed.
Yeah.
That was Matt Mercer.
I think it was Matt Mercer. I don't remember.
Why do you keep finding Matt Mercers in these shows?
Matt Mercer's in everything.
Fair.
But yeah, like, Real Creed has a pretty good death. Pino has like a really sad ending to her story. Yeah.
I have to talk a little bit about Raw Creed, because actually Raw Creed is probably one of my favorite characters. He's like the security dude of the whole place, but then he revolts. So then like they're after him, like they're trying to kill him because he knows too much, and then he releases the Rapture, which I don't even know what the Rapture did. Like, did they even say what the Rapture did?
I mean, everyone was dead after the Rapture was activated, but I don't know if that was like because of that or because of like Proxy 1 being an asshole.
But you know, like this guy, and then like towards the end, he's like, "I want to see my daughter one last time," and then like right at the end, we learn that like Pino is his daughter. Pino, Pino was the, his like little robot thing that was his daughter, and then he just falls on like a glass shard and just dies. And then Pino like leaves behind a note for him, and then that guy's like android finds the note and brings it back to Pino, and then he was just like, she brings him back her little piano thing, and she's like, "He wanted you to have this," or whatever. I liked his entourage, but the ending is so weird because like it's just the same crew again. It's like Riel and Pino are on the Rabbit, but then the android's there too. It is like, "Hey, I'm part of this now," and Vincent's like, "I am the agent of death," because I guess he's going to try and kill the humans.
Yeah, it's kind of ambiguous because the ending is literally humans coming back from space, and Vincent seems like he's gonna kill them. And it doesn't, like, it makes no sense because the humans that are on Earth can't live without the proxies, but if the Earth gets better, then the proxies will die. So it's like a whole weird dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, then it just kind of ends.
But like a lot of I was like, what domes can they even live in? I guess they could live in that one like that had all the robots like cutting the lawn, and the one with the freaking like
Disney
proxy that could disguise himself. Yeah, and then the Disneyland. The Disneyland's like the only one that actually still has people besides Rondo.
Yeah.
So Disneyland was actually a really good one.
Yeah, like the people seemed kind of unhappy, but they still seemed... I mean, they seemed happy, but they seemed unhappy that they were so happy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, they were like happy all the time, but they didn't really know what happiness actually was.
Yeah.
So when they saw Pino, they're like, "Oh, it's like that's a real smile." And then I guess she infected them. I don't know. It kind of looked like she infected the other robots, and that's why they were acting so weird.
Yeah, I mean, she does have that weird virus in her. That boy has
Like
the
every
virus.
dome has like their own culture. Like what was it? Romdo is like a Greek kind of like
philosophy thing.
Yeah. So overall, what'd you think about it, though?
I don't know. It was a slog to get through. Like, we started watching these like a long time ago. I couldn't even watch like an episode. I could barely even watch an episode a week. It was so boring.
Ergo, again, I've said this before. I will always say this. Ergo Proxy is not for everybody. It is a very difficult anime to watch, but it is definitely one of my favorites.
Like, there's some good episodes, but like, I can like it. I like it as like some. I like it. I like to hate it. It's like almost so bad it's good.
I've given each of you your own Book of Bantora.
Can we gift this?
No, all gifts are final.
Yeah, I was wondering who was going to get the lump of coal equivalent. I think Zach got it.
I don't know, you both got pretty bad gifts. To a degree.
Samurai 7 was okay. It was above average.
So what would you rate this out of 10?
Like a 5, 4, 5.
Alright, I respect it.
There's some good in there, but a lot of it's just like...
So, transitioning a bit, Zach, you recommended me a very, very special anime called Gotta Be the Twin Tail, which I had zero information going into. Like, I knew nothing about this. And I made sure I kept it that way until I started watching it, and I'm glad that I did. Because it is a fucking roller coaster, my man. So I watched like the first 3 episodes, and then me and Zach binge watched the rest of it last night.
Oh.
Yeah, I forgot how wild this anime was, so I'm like really glad that I freaking watched it with you. It's a lot better than I remembered it being.
It's so good. So like this main character, I'm gonna pull up the names real fast. So like the main character, Soji, is like just this dude who's going to his new high school, and he's obsessed with the twin tail hairstyle, which is just like 2 ponytails.
Katsune Miku's hair.
Yeah. He's obsessed with it. He's like, this is the best thing ever. He's constantly looking at other girls' hair, being like, oh, that's the best one. Hers is perfect. It matches her personality, etc., etc. And he has a childhood best friend named Aika. She also has twin tails, and she's wearing them because of him. She like kind of wants to get his attention, but she's kind of a tsundere. She's like, oh yeah, you know, whatever. I just wear these because I like them. So that's, you know, that whole dynamic. And then, like, pretty much, like, somebody's just... So his family owns, like, a restaurant. It never comes up in any way, shape, or form, but his family just owns a restaurant. Sorry, his mom owns a restaurant. I think his dad's dead. They, like, pointed out in, like, one throwaway line, but... there's like this girl sitting there with like a newspaper, and they're like, hey, we're closed. And then the girl kind of like pokes a hole in the newspaper to like peek at him, and they're like, alright, this girl's weird. And she's like, hey, you have a undying love for twin tails, don't you? And Soji's like, yeah, I do, how'd you know? And she's like, hey, put this bracelet on. And Aika's like, I don't think you should do that. That's really weird. Like, who the fuck is this person that's in this closed restaurant that we're in? Why are they just giving you this weird bracelet? And she keeps making things very sexual. Like, she's like, oh yeah, slip that thing on that, or slip this on that big thing of yours. It might be difficult, but I'm sure I can take it. And it's just like, why?
Oh yeah, might add that Anthony watched this dubbed, and the dub is so good.
Dub is fantastic. I have no idea if the Japanese version is anything like this, but it's perfect.
The dub, I swear to God, finds like a million different ways to just say boobs in like funny ways.
Yeah, they never repeat the same way of saying boobs. It's always something different. It's amazing. Like a love globes, sweater missiles.
Yeah, it was like fucking mighty mammaries and like baby mosquito bites.
That's my favorite one. And so he ends up putting it on, and he like Power Ranger style transforms into this persona called Tail Red, which is just like his gender swap that has these big giant twin tails. And he's super powerful. He has all these abilities. And then he finds like this lizard, I think it's called like Lizard Guildy. So all the villains are named Animal Guildy. And then like the higher ups are called like Mythical Creature Guildy. And it's really weird, but I love it. I love it so much. So he finds like Lizard Guildy, and he's like learning how to fight, and Lizard Guildy's like, oh yeah, hold this stuffed animal for me. And you're like, what? And it's kind of weird. He ends up beating him. It's whatever. And then it cuts to like this spaceship, and there's all these like really intimidating looking like massive monsters, and they're all like, we need to take down this new threat, Tail Red. They're like, oh, how should we do it? And one's like, what if we tie her up in ribbons? And it's like cuts like a really lewd like shot of Tail Red like in ribbons. It's like, no, what if we put her in a summer outfit and splash water on her so she has to cover herself up and can't fight? And then like a third guy chimes, he's like, oh, what if we tie her up with rope? And then it's like BDSM rope. And then like the leader is like, all of you quiet. These are all great ideas. We must settle this with battle.
Yeah, these are all great ideas.
And this is like, these villains sound so intimidating, and then they're doing this, and then it just cuts, and it's like the next episode, and then it's like Turtle Guildy versus I forget what the other one was, and they do like rock paper scissors, and they're like, I shall take the first blow, and then a fucking giant Jenga tower drops in from the sky.
Oh, good, because I thought that happened later in the series, so when I was watching it with you, I was like, did I imagine the Jenga thing?
No, it's so good. So they just play Jenga to see who goes down to fight Tail Red first.
Uh-huh.
So essentially, there are these things called the Elemelians, who are like these monster creatures who are like Crab Guildy and Alligator Guildy and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And they are apex predators who feed off of aspects of things, where it's like an aspect is like glasses or twin tails, and it's like certain people have stronger resonance with these aspects, and so they're harvesting all of the twin tail attributes of every planet, so that way there are never any twin tails anywhere ever again, because it's like it keeps them alive. Really weird. And so they kind of explain this. Their current leader is like Dragon Guildy, who's like this super big, intimidating guy. And then so it goes into like kind of a semi-episodical thing where it's like they fight a guildy that has a weird kink, and eventually Akana just gets like her own bracelet, which allows her to transform as well. And you're like, okay, cool, now there's two of them. Then Dragon Guildy shows up and he's like, hey, I'm gonna challenge you, but I have my own twin tail powers. And so this big fucking armored guy grows like these two twin tails, and they're like majestic as shit. Then they have like an epic battle. They end up winning, and you're like, okay, this is like episode like 6. What the fuck is going? Like, who's the villain? Like, this was so far this was the main villain, and they just beat him. Also, every villain ends with them exploding. Like, They do like one big
style.
move and then just boom, yeah. Yeah, and so they keep beating like one after another, almost effortlessly. Like there are some times where they just use like one move to paralyze them, and then they just hit them, and then they explode. Like it gets really depressing for the villains after a while.
Yeah, the heroes are just way too strong. Yeah, they also gain like they can also like take that like once the enemy's defeated, they get like a crystal that has their like aspect, and then that aspect gives them like a power.
Yeah, like some are like gravity manipulation, some are
Yeah, but it's like it's really weird because like I think one of them was like bloomers, but it like did something really like weird. We're like, okay,
they had like it was like swimsuit, and you could run away real fast. It was real weird. I do want to mention Crab Guildy because he might be my favorite of the utterly obscure fetishism. Yeah. Where his aspect that he loves more than anything is the back of the neck.
Yeah, and they have these like little like they don't appear a lot, but there's like these like little putty kind of like Power Rangers putty like monsters.
Oh no.
And like they're just like holding mirrors behind the characters, like trying to look at the back of their neck.
And he's like super fast and like sneaky, so he can see the backs of people's necks, and it's like, what?
All right.
And then they just use 2 moves and beat him. And then like early in the series, they had like somebody who was like the class president, and she had these 2 beautiful twin tails, and then they're like, I think she kind of catches on that Tail Red and Tail Blue are who the main characters are.
Uh-huh.
And they pretty much were like, hey, do you want to join us? We have 1 extra bracelet. And she's like, yeah, but my problem is I don't love twin tails like you guys. And that's kind of the problem, is those bracelets are made around loving twin tails.
Uh-huh.
And so like she can transform, and like so Tail Red's whole thing is she's very offensive. Tail Blue is like she's very brute strength, very like strong. And then Tail Yellow is like weapons and armor. Like she has a bunch of guns and armor, and then she can shed them all to make like this big gun. It's really weird. We'll get to that in a minute, though.
Just like a plot phase when they fight Dragon Guildy, he reveals that like they're like kind of the whole thing is that like if the Tails superheroes fight, if the Twin Tails superheroes fight the Guildies, then they kind of spread likeness of Twin Tails. Oh, yeah. Therefore adding more of the aspect out.
Yeah, they essentially become celebrities, and like the world falls in love with these characters, and so everyone is wearing Twin Tails, and they're like, cool, that's just more free power for us.
Which is an actual like written thing, and like such a silly dumb thing.
Yeah, like that plot point is really amazingly thought out for how dumb this is.
I can immediately think of that happening in our superhero game.
Exactly. It's like, oh, cool, these people are superheroes. The villain feeds off their superhero like esque power. Now everyone's impersonating superheroes. It's like,
yeah, it's just like the fairy tale strength of like from like fables and stuff like that. Or it's just like the more people know your story, the more power you have, just because you're known.
Yeah. So, going back a bit, so we were introduced to Dragon Guildy, who ran his cult, who all of them loved Twin Tails, but each one of them had their own personal thing as well as Twin Tails.
Okay.
So it's like, they love Twin Tails, but like they also like the back of the neck, or swimsuits, or girl holding stuffed animal, or, and it's like, so both of those would be perfect. We eventually get introduced to 2 more sets of people who are like essentially 2 more armies, like the equivalent of Dragon Guildy and his army, where we have Crack-a-Gildy and Leviagildy. And they are small boobs and big boobs, and so they're like at war with each other. Well, like kind of, but then they're like, we'll agree to disagree and we'll settle this later because we have business to take care of. But they're all kind of still under the like symbol of the twin tail. And then they reference the
twin tail thing is sounding a lot more malevolent the more you go on.
It's they say it so much.
It sounds like just such a like.
It's just a hairstyle.
Like, the amount that it keeps getting brought up, I'm just like, is this like some kind of weird, like, magical, overarching villain thing? Is the Twin Tails really just like some kind of subconscious monster that's just implanted itself into the brains of everyone in this world?
So they kind of reference Omega Gildy, I think that's what his name was.
Who was like Ultima Gildy.
Oh yeah, Ultima Gildy, who's like the head boss. They reference him, and they're like, oh yeah, his right-hand executor is coming here to visit us. Just to be sure things are going as planned. That's super intimidating, whatever. Later find out that it's just a human teenage girl who has the glasses aspect and has made a deal that they're not allowed to harvest glasses aspect, so she can spread it infinitely to protect it. Because she loves glasses more than anything.
Yeah, she becomes like a pop idol to like spread love for glasses. So it's part of her plan.
Yeah.
Alright.
It's
Also, how the main characters have their bracelets are called the tail gears. She's got the glass gear or whatever it's called.
Also, there's also a character who I kind of neglected. Who it was the girl that was in the cafe that gave him the bracelets originally. Her name is Twirl. She had the Twin Tails thing, and she had the bracelet originally, but she willingly gave it up because her pride of being proud of her Twin Tails and wanting to defend her planet cost her the lives of pretty much everybody.
Oh?
Yeah, it gets like super dark. Where she's like, yeah, I wanted to save my planet and protect Twin Tails, and it cost me the life of everybody, so I willingly gave up my Twin Tails because I was not worthy of them. And she put it in a bracelet, and that was the bracelet that she gave to Tail Blue. She, like, refined it for Tail Red. No, sorry, it was the bracelet she gave to Tail Red, but she used the Tail Blue gear to fight originally. And the girl, whose name is Anko, who's the glasses girl, she was, like, in love with Twirl, and then she's like, oh yeah, she pulls out, like, this photo book, she's like, this is a treat for me for, you know, conquering this planet or whatever, and she's looking through the photos, and she doesn't have her Twin Tails, and she's like, why doesn't she have her Twin Tails in these photos? I know she did when I took them. And then you find out that, like, since Twirl relinquished her Twin Tails, all existence of them existing is gone. Like, all photos... It's just gone. And she can never tie her hair up in Twin Tails, and she can't tie anyone else's hair up in Twin Tails.
Yeah, because her Twin Tails aspect is taken from her. It's impossible for her to ever wear Twin Tails.
Yeah, and like,
and they make it so melodramatic, and that's why it's so funny. Because like anytime they think about it, it's like, oh, she can never wear Twin Tails again, and everybody in the room gets really sad.
So there's a part where Anko, the glasses girl, sends Soji into a dream dimension because she's like, yeah, I could just do this, and Soji is like surrounded by essentially naked girls with twin tails, and they're like, yeah, we'll do whatever the fuck you want. He's like, cool, this is the best life ever. And then Twirl is there, and she's like, hey, do you want me to put my hair up in twin tails? And he's like, that's not possible, you're not the real Twirl. And then he like forces himself out of the dream dimension.
Oh. And
Anko's like, yeah, no one's ever done that before, that's like insane. It was so dumb, but it was so good.
Yeah, and then I like the blonde-haired girls, like you just hear them talking about the thing, and then she's just like, it's like, no, I can't. It's like, even if it's nighttime, I can't go on a walk like this.
Yeah. So, tail yellow has like a dog walking fetish where she wants to be walked like a dog, like treated like a dog.
Yeah, they go like so overboard with like her masochism that it's like really funny
Like,
because she's like
almost
this like
worse than
refined rich
Darkness.
girl.
Oh no.
She's like this refined rich girl, but she's so masochistic. Like there's a scene where like the main character needs to pee or whatever. It's like I'll join you, and then she chugs like a bottle of a thing that makes her have to pee. He's like, you didn't have to do that, you know.
So there's like a scene where they get Tail Yellow, and she doesn't really know how to use her like gear very well because she doesn't like twin tails. Essentially, her mom makes her wear them, and so like, oh, that's fine. We can just go through some special training, and you'll be able to fight with us, no problem. And so Tail Yellow and Tail Red go off to train, and then they get like an alert, like, oh hey, monsters are attacking. Tail Blue's like, it's fine, I'll go handle this. There's only 2 of them. You know, we've dealt with more before. She gets there and she finds out that it's Crack-a-Gildy and Leviagildy, which are like super strong. And then they get like weird tentacles, and for some reason Leviagildy grows his tentacle out of his crotch, and it's really uncomfortable. And then she's like, yeah, I really hate tentacles. And so Yellow and Red are like training with Twirl and like, oh yeah, do this, do that. And then they get like an alert, and Tail Blue's like, oh my god, you know, you guys need to get here immediately. I'm having trouble. You know, I'm losing. And then they're like, okay, cool, we'll be right there. They essentially teleport there, and Crack-a-Gildy is already gone, and she's beating the fuck out of Leviagildy with her bare fists.
Oh.
brutally. And so you find out that they called her breast small, which is like a big problem for that character. And like, you know, the one side is like loves small boobs, the other side likes big boobs, and so she just kills them both with her bare fists. It's honestly a really funny scene.
There's also like a kind of like a side thing where like, even though they're like the tail hero, like the tail heroes are like really like famous and like everybody likes them, a lot of people are like still think that Tail Blue is a bad guy because how like brutish she is. Like people are actually scared of her.
Oh yeah, and you later find out that the reason why the main character Soji, who's a boy, transforms into a girl when he turns into Tail Red is because Twirl just wanted her to. She's like, yeah, what? I like girls. Fucking sue me.
Nice.
And so they're both gone, and then the glasses girl like summons these 4 weird shadow monsters that turn into other guildies. She's like, all right, I've taken over all 3 fleets. You are all now under my control. We're going to handle this professionally. I'm going to seek out my greatest warrior that I know, and he will deal with this. And she goes into like this dojo section of the ship for some reason. And this guy named Spider Gildy is there. And behind him in like kanji is written girly boy.
Yeah, no.
And he's like this like cool looking samurai who has like a spider aesthetic, and he's got like this big ass sword, and he's really cool looking. Who is voiced by the guy who plays Madalast.
Oh no. Even when I think I'm safe, they draw me back in. Curse you.
And so like he goes to like this random school, and like you just see him essentially standing like with his hands on his hips in front of these like 2 girls, and they're like embracing each other like, oh, I'm so sorry, I have to tell you the truth though, I'm actually a boy. And then I was like, oh, that's okay. And then Spider Gilly just doesn't say anything and just stands there for like way too long. And then like Tail Red shows up and like starts fighting, but I probably should have said this earlier. So they had an encounter with the glasses girl earlier. Her name's Anko, and Anko kissed Tail Red, and that really like threw him off and like got him kind of interested in girls' lips, which took away from his love for Twin Tails.
Oh no.
So like he was like losing his powers and isn't as strong or fast as he was before. So he like fights Spider Gildy, and Spider Gildy is like the first opponent that doesn't go down in one shot, and they're like, oh fuck. And the Spider Gildy pretty much beats Tail Red. And then he's like, cool, I won, I'm leaving. Even though he like still could have been beaten by the other two that were there, he's just like, I beat Tail Red, I'm gone.
He does say that he ran away because he was afraid that he was going to lose.
Yeah. I like that though, where he's just like, he's acting towards the enemies like he won and that he's just going away because he doesn't feel like it's necessary to keep going. But in reality, he was scared to lose. So he goes into like this weird cave to train. And he goes essentially underwater to like this weird training thing. And then he comes back out like many episodes later. And you know how spiders molt, where they leave their essentially shell and they have like a new body. He does that, and now he's Arachna Gildy, which is like a white, slimmed down version of Spider Gildy. And it's a really cool transformation in my opinion. Like I really liked it. And so like for a couple episodes, Soji's like kind of struggling with like, no, I love Twin Tails, I know I do. And then like Worm Gildy shows up, and they just fucking destroy him. And then like Snail Gildy's like, I gotta talk about Snail Gildy for a second. So Worm Gildy and Snail Gildy were both disciples under Spider Gildy, so they like femboys. And Worm Gildy was like kind of dressed like a femboy, and then Snail Gildy was like, Worm Boy was the best of all of us. Like, and then so Tail Blue does like an ultimate attack, and then the snail guy like it's revealed that he hid in his shell, and then he comes out of his shell's like, oh, that attack didn't affect me at all because of my shell. Anyways, Worm Gildy was the best of us, blah blah blah, and then he explodes from being hit by that attack. They never referenced that he said that attack didn't affect him, but it just did.
I love the Worm Gildy thing though. It's like Worm Gildy's like a funny character, and then like all of the Gildies are crying after Worm Gildy dies, and they're just like, and then there's like this sequence where like Worm Gildy like laughing and like skipping through a field. Also, like around that time, like after I think because Spider Gildy hit Tail Red, like Soji turns into a girl.
Oh yeah, he turns into a girl, but it's not Tail Red. Like this girl, because Tail Red is kind of flat-chested and like looks younger. This is like a literal girl version of Soji, where it looks like about his age, has breasts, is a bit taller, twin tails aren't as nice. Like, it's very weird. And he can still transform into his like powered up form, which is that little girl form.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the whole thing. He has to learn how to actually like, because he just like he doesn't know how to take care of his hair, and so like his friend Ayaka is like, who's Tail Blue, is like showing him how to take care of his twin tails, like when he's taking a shower and like when he's going to bed and all this stuff. And he has to learn that it's like you have to take your twin tails down sometimes because you need to care about yourself first, aside from what's in your heart. And then he has like a deep moment where like he sees his inner world, where there's like his soul, which has twin tails on it. And it's like, yes, you might like girls, but your love for twin tails is something entirely different, and that doesn't take away from that fact. And he gets like powered up again.
Alright then.
Yeah. It gets weirder. So he fights Arachna Gildy for like the final. Arachna Gildy essentially is like, fuck you guys, I'm making tornadoes that are turning men into girls.
Yeah, already forgot about that. The freaking
Alright then.
tornado that just turns men into women.
And it's literally like a montage of like men in construction buildings, and like a tornado goes over them, and then they're all girls, but they're still like they're still roughly the same size and like all in the same clothes, and they're like, what the fuck? But they have twin tails.
That's a heck of a Twisted Sister reference.
And so Tail Red challenges Arachne Gildy, and then like she unlocks these 2 new forms, which we get to see for a total of like 40 seconds because she can only stay in each one for like 22 seconds. I don't even remember what the fuck their names are because it's literally like the last scene of the show. And then she does like, the final finishing move against Spider Gildy, and Spider Gildy's like, "You are truly a worthy opponent of having the ultimate twin tails," and then he explodes.
God, just some of the weirder things I want to mention about is like a scene where like Tail Red, I don't even remember what she was fighting at the time, but like she pulls out like a second sword and is like, "I learned that I have 2 people to protect, so I have 2 swords."
Yeah.
And the greatest scene is fucking Tail Blue fighting Flea Gildy, where she's just stomping him as he's like, his thing is legs, so he's like yes, more.
This is how a fitting way I should die.
Yeah, and then like literally right before he explodes, he yells, "I'm almost there."
My favorite scene though, and it's like, I love this line so much, I'm going to have to use this for something like a D&D character in some point, where they fight Owl Gildy, his whole thing is like like a girl reading literature. He gets defeated, and he like looks up and he's like, "It's not me that's dying, it's literature," and then he explodes. And I'm like, oh, that's so good. And so it kind of ends in a weird cliffhanger way where like the glasses girl Anko is like, we have a traitor to deal with, and then they show like a silhouette of some beast man. So set a course for there. Well, we're gonna go deal with him, then we're gonna come back and deal with Tail Red. And then like we have Tail Red's 2 new forms that we just saw for like 10 seconds and have no explanation for what the fuck they are or what they look like. And it's like they set themselves up for a second season, but they haven't done it. Like this came out in like 2014.
Oof.
And they haven't come out with a second season, and it's really sad because I would love a second season of this because we still have Ultima Gildy, we still have the Traitor, we have Soji's new powers. Like,
did Megane ever fight? I don't remember if she ever even fought at all.
Megane? Who?
The robot.
Megane. No, because Megane like looked like she was about to fight, and then she was like, "Oh, thank you for taking care of Miss Anko," and then flew off with her.
Yeah, that's one of the better characters in this show. She's the assistant to Anko, and she's like this imposing looking, like almost Gundam looking thing that like is bigger than most people, but she talks like a high school girl, and like has the mannerisms as well. Some great scenes with her, like where she just has a motorcycle that she comes and then like stops like right before the turns back.
I forgot that there's also like Anko's like obsessed with getting people to email her because she's like super introverted. So like she'll like kill somebody and then she'll be like, where's your phone? You need to take down my email address right now. And he's like, I don't have a phone, I'm just a brute. And then his fucking phone goes off. And then it's like revealed later that like she's like super introverted. Like it's kind of all like a facade to a degree. Well, I don't want to say a facade. It's just her being like, this is who I am, but I'm not going to socialize with you. I'm just going to tell you what's what. And then like Megane hands her like a bunch of QR codes, and she's like, what are these? She's like, oh yeah, these are QR codes to your email address. So instead of talking to people, you could just hand them one of these and they can get your email. And then there's like a later scene where Anko, like, all of her clothes disappear, and I don't remember why. And then
like shreds her clothes.
yeah, and then Megane like hands her some band-aids that have her QR codes on them, and she's like, "Put these where these count," and it's just really weird. Twin Tails was fucking amazing though.
The villains are like the best part of the show. Like when you get to see them like in their home base, it's always so funny. Like there's a scene where like Drago Gildy's deciding who's gonna fight next, so he's like looking through a guy's like laptop where he has this like notes game,
Poor
and then he's
Swan
like,
Gildy.
yeah, he's like, he's like, looks like you have the secret harem route. But it's like you're missing a lot of the CGs. It's like you must have forgot to save.
So you had a bad morning. We're not sending you. Oh yeah, I forgot. So it's like they're at a table, and this guy named Swan Gildy's like, "I want to go. I'm going to challenge her." And they're like, "Oh yes, Swan Gildy, you have the powerful nurse guild or nurse aspect." And he's like, "Yes." It's like, "We shall see how well you will fight. Bring out his laptop." He's like, "What? No!" And then they bring out his laptop, search the visual novel, and then just we're like, "Yeah, no, you've had a bad morning because you didn't get all the CGs." Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
I gave Anthony this anime, like, even though it's like really old and obscure, like at this point, like 5-6 years old and really obscure, just because this anime stuck with me for a long time, just how silly it is, and I knew it was up our alley in terms of like the weird shit we like Keijo and stuff.
Yeah. This is definitely something I would want to rewatch at some point.
Yeah, and like, yeah, the dub was a lot better than I thought it would be.
Twas great. Twas great. All right. I rate this probably get 7.5 out of 10. It was great. Definitely worth watching. Very silly.
Yeah, don't go in for the story, just go in for how absurd it is.
It's good for 12 episodes, but I want a second season. Alright.
Join us next week for part 2. Anthony totally didn't forget to do this podcast until last minute, and had to cut it in half. Stay frosty.